Hi everyone, welcome to the Thoughts for Change Makers. So today I am with Michael. He is a skydiver, a free diver, and a breathing coach with a keen focus on enhancing quality of life and not merely its span. So he have different methodology that he can talk about on how he's helping people to improve their sleep, their mental clarity, their physical performance, and so overall well-being. And that is what we want to focus on today, because that is so crucial to be able to perform well in our life, to make sure that we are doing well and that our well-being is covered. So all his work is there to help you foster resilience, increase your stress tolerance in anything that you are doing in life. And now I have a question for Michael. So, Michael, welcome. And what is the definition of performance in your world? How would you define what is individual performance or performance as a whole? What is it for you?
Well, let's look at individual performance. I think the definition of individual performance is operating at an individual's top capacity. So often we're operating at a lower capacity than we normally could. And I think performance is about giving your body and your brain, because they're both very linked, we'll talk about that later, the optimal chance to work at its peak performance or their peak performance.
Okay.
We're using performance in the definition there, but to operate at its peak potential, I think.
And are you okay? Because I know that you are about mindfulness in action. Are you okay if we have a sneak peek of what it looks like or what it could feel like for
Absolutely,
everyone joining us live? Yeah.
Great. Okay, so if you're joining in, maybe just sit up nice and straight. You can either close down your eyes or just kind of soften your gaze a little bit. And then just to start off with, just tune into the sensation of the air as it flows in through your nostrils and as it flows back out through your nostrils. It's not trying to change the breath in any way. At the start, let's just kind of notice what your breathing's naturally doing. It's very tricky to observe something and not change it in any way, but do your best and just feel the air as it brushes past the fine hairs in your nose, and feel the air as it brushes past the fine hairs in your nose on the exhale. Follow it on the inhale and follow it back on the exhale. And simply by focusing on your breath, kind of just quieten down some of the noise going on inside your mind. Breathing is something we can do unconsciously, or when we're not thinking about it, your body will breathe for you, but it's something that we can do consciously. We can take control of our breath. So now let's just start to slow that breath down. So taking the breath that you're just observing now, let's start to shape it in a way that's slower and smoother than what it was before. Again, following the air as it brushes past the fine hairs within your nose on the inhale. Follow the air as it brushes past the fine hairs in your nose on the exhale. And shaping your breath in a way that's slower and smoother than what it was before. A slow, smooth inhale, followed by a slow, smooth exhale. And as you're doing this, have the awareness that your mind is shaping the way that you breathe, and that the way that you breathe is shaping your mind. And then continue to follow the breath. Slow, smooth inhale and a slow, smooth exhale. Wherever you are in your breathing cycle, let's all exhale at the bottom. Hold your exhale for 3, 2, 1. Let's inhale. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Exhale. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Inhale. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Exhale. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Inhale. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Exhale. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Go back to following your breath. Follow the air as it flows in through your nostrils on the inhale. Follow the air as it flows back out through your nostrils on the exhale. And notice now that your mental state should be slightly different to what it was when you first started this exercise. And it can be that easy.
I guess, but maybe when you're not live.
Well, that goes to an interesting point, actually. So when we are in these states of stress, like I think a lot of people that I've come across, they're like, okay, I want to learn these breathing techniques. We all look at it as a technique, and I'm going to use this technique when I'm stressed out. And that will work somewhat, but it works so much more if you practice it outside and then take it into these stressful situations when they arise. So I guess the example would be as if I learned how to dribble a basketball, and then I was like, okay, I'm not going to practice this at all, and then we're going to go play a game on Friday night with everybody.
Yeah.
As opposed to learning how to dribble a basketball, practicing all week, maybe taking Thursday off, just having a rest day, and then come Friday, when you go to actually play your game of basketball with your friends, you've really built upon that skill. So breathing and mindfulness is the exact same in that sense that the more you practice it, the better you get at it in times of need. Like when you're doing a live on LinkedIn.
That's so the proof in real time that I'm not practicing enough my breathing. And I remember that you brought awareness on that one when you shared with me the story that when you go skydiving with people, with students, and that you're strapped on them, you could sense the different breathing that is happening out there and how they maybe handle the experience of jumping out of a plane. Can you share more on this one, please?
Yeah, so that's how I really got onto all of this. So I used to be a tandem skydiving instructor, and I was always looking for ways to increase my own performance and to help my customers through their experience. So I think I came back from a holiday once and I was like, okay, I have to go pay up my credit card debt. And I was sort of like toing and froing whether I wanted to do tandem skydiving anymore. I was like, is this just taking people for thrill rides? And I really wanted to find a way to bring more out of what I did. So I started looking into ways to really make it a transformational experience for people. So breathing was one of the key things that came up. So I started to learn more about breathing and giving some breathing techniques to help people relax and calm down. So I would guide people through even just a 2-second inhale and a 4-second exhale. And that would help a lot. And then with the invention of Apple Watches and that kind of thing, I was like, okay, let's look at your heart rate. The heart rate's a really good way of seeing how stressed someone is. And then we'd take off from the plane, heart rate up around 100. And then it would end up that we'd just, with these simple breathing exercises, we'd be able to bring that heart rate back down to like 85 or 70 sometimes, just before we'd jump out of the plane. And then the more I learned, I was able to assess someone's breathing before we even got in the plane. So I'd put the harness on someone and then I'd say, just take in a deep breath for me. So the people, there was 2 kind of classes generally. There was the mouth breathers and the upper chest breathers. So they'd be like, and you're like, okay. Cool. And then there'd be the nasal breathers and the belly breathers. So it was more of an inhale through the nose, filling up the belly. And I started to notice a pattern. And the people that were mouth breathing and chest breathing, and we call it like chest and shoulder breathing as well. You've all seen someone when they're stressed, like,
Yeah.
yeah. So those people, when we jumped out of the plane, they wouldn't be able to follow the instructions. They weren't clearly present. There would be a freak out that the arms and legs and everything were going. And that made my job harder as well. And then the people who were nasal breathers and belly breathers, they were able to handle the stressful environment a lot better. So I started to sort of piece things together, and I was like, okay, well, if you've learned, we've all learned these poor breathing habits. So can we shift that around and change our day-to-day breathing? And is that going to change how we operate under pressure in any situation, not just jumping out of a plane?
Indeed, but it's so crucial to be, as you mentioned, like practicing in no under pressure environment, so that when you're under pressure, that is coming as a reflex. Because when you're under pressure or stress, like any decisions or action that you take can maybe alter the consequences of what's happening next. Or something that, for example, if you're in a meeting and that you are stressed and you say something, then you can regret later. Or you had a behavior, maybe you had anger that came up, and then people won't forget those type of behaviors, for example, during a meeting or during a stressful situation. And as change maker, as leaders, it's really important that your behaviors is under control, right? Because you will be tested out there. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
This is a big subject. And I'll tell you, I can share with you some of what I've learned around that I find really interesting. So I think a lot these days we try to use mindfulness as a way of kind of suppressing our emotions, right? And I love, there's a favorite book of mine is The Laws of Human Nature by Robert Greene. And he talks about our shadow. And our shadow is kind of like these unexpressed emotions that if we just try and bury them down, they're going to rear out their ugly head at the least opportune time. So that's going to be in a meeting, and then it's uncontrollable at that stage. So he's all about finding, so anger is, I think, one of the classics, especially it's for both sexes, but I'm going to say especially for males in our current society, where we're told to really like bring down our anger. And it's very natural for men to have anger. If you look at our history, we're fighting and been in war. We've been defending ourselves for so many years. And then suddenly in the last 50 years, it's like, oh, okay, rein that back in. So it's very important to have an expression of anger where it's healthy, whether it's exercise or sport or even like a martial art or something like that. So it's good to, and even like feeling an anger in a moment where it's safe to feel that and feeling it fully, like, okay, I'm angry, and not going into the why or the story, just like I'm angry and feel it fully. Yeah. But in saying that, and it's a big but, like you say, often those will come up at inopportune moments, such as a meeting and a really inappropriate time. So it's also really good to have the skills to be able to down regulate that so that you can take it back and do it in a safe place. But when I say maybe an unsafe place would be at work. And I think most people would agree that you don't want to take it out on the wrong people. You know, it's good to have an expression of that anger, an expression of your emotions, but in a healthy way, not taking it out on your partner or your work colleagues or your boss, especially, I think, or your employees. Actually, I'm going to say both the exact same for employees and employers.
Yeah, energy is spreading. So your energy is spreading. And I think also you share something about that one, about like the distance, because you said that sometimes you can enter in a meeting room and the people are in a certain level of energy and maybe you're in a different level, and that's maybe not the best way to start a meeting, for example. Do you remember? So that was like an offline conversation.
Yeah. And we'll get that on some of the slides, I think, too. But
You
depending
want me
on
to
the
have a
energy
slide?
level you're in.
Yeah.
Yeah, if you're in a good energy level, that's definitely going to affect the people around you. So that would be a positive. And it's good if you're going to be, and if you know that you're stepping into a high stress or a high pressure situation, you feel these nerves coming up and that can make it worse. So it's great to have some good down regulation tools to down regulate yourself before you even go into it. This one I love. I love a good Venn diagram.
Do you want to talk on this one, or you want me to go on?
Let's start. Let's start at the beginning. So we have the mind and we have the body, and they're both linked, right? Our brains are connected by the central nervous system, and that goes to the rest of our body. And the key link in between that is your breath. Because if you just, like we did in that breathing exercise, if we just stop and tune into your breath will tell you what's happening in your nervous system. So if you feel yourself breathing quite rapidly and shallow, then that's going to tell you that your nervous system is kind of ramped up. Another word for that is sympathetic. So sympathetic nervous system is kind of your fight and flight response. And then the breath, if we were in that fight or flight response, the cool thing about it is, like we just did in that exercise too, we can use the breath, we can control the breath with your mind, and that in turn helps send signals to your brain, and your brain then sends the signals to the rest of your body, telling your body that it's not in any clear threat or danger. So yeah, I like looking back on stresses. It's kind of, it's an interesting thing. It goes way back to our reptilian brain. So if you think of a reptile, if it's being preyed upon or if it senses a threat, it's going to do one of three things. It's going to fight the threat, it's going to flight or run away from the threat, or it's going to freeze and hope that it's not being seen. So in modern world, the way this relates in our brain, if we will always go back to our training, right? So if we see a threat, then we will fight the threat. If we're a trained fighter, if we're a trained runner, if we run away from things, we'll run. And if we have no training whatsoever, we might just freeze in the moment. And I think everyone's felt that in a stress situation, right? You've either just want to run or you want to freeze. And so the way that relates to our breathing is if we stop breathing. So there's a thing called screen apnea or email apnea. When we're looking at our screens or we're reading intensely into an email, then you might notice your breathing has just stopped, right? So that's a sympathetic response when the breathing is stopped altogether. And then following that stopped breath, when we realize it's stopped, it goes into very we're catching up on the breath afterwards. And vice versa, if we're stressed and the response is to kind of run or fight, but we don't actually have a physical threat to run away from or to fight, then the breath rate has still increased and the heart rate has increased to deal with that threat, but we're not actually physically doing anything. So you'll know I think everyone again watching will know that when they feel stressed, the heart rate goes up. All right. So that's our brain creating a threat, whether it's a physical threat or for us, a lot of these days, and especially in the corporate world, that might just be a mental thing. You've got a lot of things happening. And so it's creating stress in the reptilian brain. And so we're reacting in that stressful way. So it's really good to have this practice of slow breathing, especially in order to teach the body that, hey, it's okay. All we're doing is using a remote control. Think of the breath as a remote control to go, no, it's all right. I see you. I feel you. I can recognize that you're stressed, but there's not actually any real threat. and let's like ramp that nervous system back down. Yeah. And then, when we get into a stress response, because our body's getting ready to run away or fight this threat, then blood actually pulls away from the brain and it goes into the muscles. So this is why in a stressful state, I've definitely felt this one before, and I'm sure a lot of the listeners have, where you actually can't think of like an argument you've been in, and you just say the most retarded things, or you're like, oh, and then afterwards you're like, why did I say that? Yeah, it's because your brain physically isn't working. So if you have tools to recognize that stress response coming up and be able to kind of cut it off early and be like, no, it's okay, relax back down, then that blood will come back in from your muscles and go back into your brain, and you start to open everything back up again.
And so you can be articulate and well thought when you're talking.
Hopefully, that's the idea. And make better decisions as well. So I don't know if it's in everyone's comments, but I've actually just put a little article in there on heart rate variability and decision making. And our heart rate variability, kind of goes on to our next slides, is intrinsically linked to the way you breathe. And it's shown now that we always kind of know this, right? We talk about our heart as the emotional center, but there's more electrical signals going from your heart to your brain than from your brain to your heart. All right. And the way we can kind of control our heart rhythms is by, again, breathing. So it's this little feedback loop. Our brain sends a lot of signals. Our heart sends signals to our brain, and our brain sends signals to the rest of our body. But our brain can take this over, and we can control the breath, and then that will send the right signals to the heart, and then the heart will then send the right signals to the brain, which sends it over through the rest of the body.
I know that you send me more picture. Do you want to go on the next one?
Yeah, absolutely. So it definitely carries on from what we're talking about. So on these graphs, the top one, these are both heart rate variability, right? So the variation in between your heartbeats. Now, as you breathe in, if you're breathing diaphragmatically, then your diaphragm lowers, and this essentially lengthens out your heart. And on the inhale, that lowers your blood pressure, which increases your pulse. And on the exhale, this kind of squeezes the heart a little bit, so it increases your blood pressure and decreases your pulse. So if our breathing is quite erratic, it's sending these signals to our heart, right? It's kind of making your heart go all over the place. And that's, remember, your heart is sending a lot of signals to your brain. So if I kind of almost want to have a mouse to show you here, but the top one is your heart rate, and then the bottom line would be time. So this is your heart rate over time. So it's not just like a pulse like we normally see, like in a movie hospital scene where it's like boop, boop, boop. This is actually like the speed it's going. So the top one is more of a fear or stress response. And then the bottom one we call coherence. So you can see on the bottom one, this would be a nice relaxed breathing pattern with maybe like a 5-second inhale and a 5-second exhale, like we were doing in the exercise. And you can see we get this beautiful sine wave pattern happening. So this is, as we inhale, our heart rate increases. As we exhale, our heart rate decreases. And we call this coherence because when we're breathing in this way, or when our heart rate, when our HRV or heart rate is in this way, then our body is working as a whole. It has coherence, right? So your heart sending the right signals to your brain, and your brain, especially via the vagus nerve, is sending signals to the body saying, it's okay, you can relax, you're no real threat. So your digestion works better. Your immune system works better, right? All your long-term functions. but also your decision making works a lot better. So you're operating at more of your peak performance. So when you're in the stress response in the yellow box, which is probably the top one, is what most people will be in day to day, because a lot of us really don't think about the way we breathe. Then your body's thinking for short-term survival, right? So parts of, again, your brain turn off, your immune system doesn't work as well, your digestion doesn't work as well, because essentially you're telling your body that there is a threat outside. So don't worry about these long-term health functions. Let's just worry about surviving right now, because as far as your body is concerned, there is a saber-toothed tiger standing right in front of you, and you need to fight it or run away from it or stand very still. You need to stress. You don't care about your long-term health. Your digestion doesn't matter in that moment. Your immune system doesn't matter in that moment. You're in survival mode.
I think there is another one. Should I go?
There is another one. Yeah.
Yeah, that's the one. Yeah.
Yeah. So I think this one's really key for the workplace. So our own personal heart rate variability is very important, but our heart rate variability affects the people around us, and the people around us affect us. So if we're in a workplace where the whole workplace is practicing these techniques, and we're all breathing in a way that is putting our heart rate variability higher and into more coherence, then we start to affect other people in the room. So if in this diagram, there's 3 coherent people and they're influencing someone else to help them become more coherent. And the studies have shown us that your heart has an electromagnetic field. So it does influence other people. And we know as soon as someone walks into the room with either good energy or bad energy, we can feel it, right? Like I live in Byron Bay, where people are very esoteric with this kind of stuff, but whether you're an esoteric person or spiritual person or whatever, it doesn't really matter. We all have that sense. And it's because you're part of that. There's many things that you'll be able to see about a person and their energy, but part of that is that you can actually feel the rhythms of their heart.
And yeah, that's really interesting, especially for team and team performance. When you start a meeting, if you want to be effective, we talk about having like an agenda and this kind of stuff, but we don't talk too much about how do you enter in the room, whether which state are you checking your state? And that's also bringing me to another question, which is, I think in mindfulness world, is that people tell you, okay, you do your mindfulness practice in the morning and then you move on with your day. But from hearing what you said before, it seems that you should, even if people are going through busy days, what are the strategies, or what would be your advice for them to maybe make it more deliberate and have more intent around their breathing practice throughout the day? Because I guess it's not about like the 10 minutes meditation you do at the beginning of your day or at the end of your day.
Yeah. One of my teachers, who I did my yoga teacher training with, she's all about, taking it off the mat, right? You take the practice off the mat. And so with anything like yoga, meditation, yeah, it's great to have these practices and it's great to have these skill sets, but what's the point in practicing it if you don't use it? What's the point in practicing dribbling a basketball if you're never actually going to play a game of basketball? So it's strategies for taking that out into everyday life. I think if you haven't built a practice, then it's really good to at least build a practice of even just 10 minutes in the morning. And then it starts to help you be more aware of how you're breathing and how you're feeling in the moment. It just creates awareness in your body, right? And then you start to, if you have this 10-minute practice, you start to notice it in other times. So for me, when I'm driving a car, And driving a car can be very stressful, especially if you live in a town like Byron Bay and then you go up to Brisbane or the Gold Coast for the day. Suddenly it's stress city, right? And then, but you can practice these things in the car. And it's actually really good. If you get stuck in traffic, instead of being frustrated that you're stuck in traffic, oh, cool, I can practice my breathing. It doesn't always need to be a practice where you're sitting, especially cross-legged. Cross-legged for me is very uncomfortable. You can practice it in any position that's comfortable. But it's all about taking it into everyday life. And for each person, you're going to figure out a different strategy. So part of what I do when I work one-on-one with people is we have a sit down and we're like, okay, how can we have these constant reminders to breathe? And one of my favorite ones is post-it notes, having post-it notes around the place. So right in the middle of the steering wheel in the car, on the fridge, in the office, by the computer, just have a little post-it notes saying like, I'm going to check in with my breath. I'm going to adjust with my breath. I feel calm. I feel peaceful, whatever you want, whatever feels good for you. It has to be, if you're going to do affirmations, it has to be affirmations that are true. It's not like, if you have an affirmation like, I'm the calmest person on the planet, there's some part of you that's probably not going to believe that, right? So it has to be like, I have the ability to calm myself down somewhat in any moment, or have it realistic at the start. As you get better and better at it, your affirmations can increase. But yeah, it is about finding that strategy and what works for you. For some people, that might be post-it notes. For some people, just having that daily practice and is enough to like bring it into their everyday life. And some people, they might like to have it in their calendar so that it pops up 3 times a day or something like that. Yeah.
So yeah, having visual cues, what works best for you to remind you of practicing it, ultimately.
Yeah, it's building a habit. I don't know if you've read the book Atomic Habits.
Yes, I did.
Yeah, of course. I would have thought so. So it's about how can I, he's talking about if you're trying to take a new supplement and you have this new healthy supplement, how do I not forget to take it? Well, I leave it on the bench in the kitchen so that it's ready and it's handy. Okay, I'm trying to build a new habit of bringing mindful breathing into everyday life. How can I make that more accessible? How can I find little reminders to do that, to bring it into my everyday life?
Yes, I love stacking habits. So for example, when I was learning how to sail, I learned how to make knots because I was challenged that I should close my eyes on the boat and I should be able to do the knots on the boat while closing my eyes. And I was like, okay, that's a journey to get there. And I stack knot doing after brushing my teeth. So look at what habits you currently have within your day, and then you stack another habit that you want to build. And I'm like, now I'm doing another one. It's about sleeping on my back. And so that one is very hard, but you need to find ways that either it will be easy. So you need to reduce the friction, like make it frictionless, or increase the friction. So I have a strategy now for sleeping on the back, so that if I want to go on my side, that's becoming lots of friction. So I can't go on my side. I have to stay on my back. So yes. And yeah, another guy with habit. Another book is like BJ Fogg. I forgot the name of his book, but similar to Atomic Habit. So it's about habits building, but like also, how can you become more performant with stressful situation? So yes, you are building habits, but then do you provoke stressful situation so that you can practice as well under stressful situation?
Yeah, beautiful. So this is what I'm all about, right? Mindfulness and breathing in action. So I think the most relatable one is exercise, right? I think a lot more people exercise than ever before at the moment. it's definitely one of the best things you can do for your mental health. So exercise is essentially stress, right? We don't think of it as stress. Stress is a bad thing. Stress is bad. But exercise is stress. Your heart rate's up, your breathing rate's up, but it's a really good stress, right? It's really good
Stress.
for us. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. By the way, people who see stress as a good thing live people who see stress as a bad thing. That's interesting. So think of the exercise as stress, right? So my breath rate is elevated, my heart rate is elevated. So at the end of that exercise or at the end of that stress, I can practice really slow, mindful breathing to bring my heart rate back down. And if you have a fancy watch or something these days, like a lot of people do, a Whoop watch or even a Fitbit, then you can actively see your heart rate coming back down. And then it's a skill that you can practice. You're essentially putting yourself into a stressful situation and you're bringing yourself back down. Coincidentally, this is actually really good for the performance output of your exercise because you'll actually get more out of the exercise. So by going straight into a recovery phase after your exercise, the body starts to, again, go, okay, I've gone through the stress. I can now start to restore, and you get more out of your workout. Whereas I think most people leave the gym these days, they smash a coffee, they go to work, and they just stay at that like high stress throughout the day. So our bodies have rhythms. Again, back to our cave people days. You know, we used to go out hunting or get stuff done, but then we'd come home and we'd chill. We'd put that animal that we just killed in the earth oven or on the spit, and we'd just sit around and shoot the breeze for a little while. Whereas these days we go to the gym 7 a.m., we come home, have breakfast, and then we go from work to 9 to 5. And it's really key to have those. Notice that the body does go up and down, and when it wants to come down, go with that. So one of those situations would be post-exercise. Now we could do other things as well, and this is the really juicy bit. We can do things like going skydiving, right? We can intentionally put ourselves into a stressful situation because jumping out of a plane is stressful. It also happens to be really fun.
Yeah.
For 90% of people, and there's probably people watching this that are like, I will never go skydiving. If you are watching this, I have taken thousands of people that said that they will never go skydiving, and then their relatives got it for them on their birthday. They're like, I don't want to do this. I'm here against my will. And they land and they are the happiest people on the planet because they've just done something they didn't think they could do. Their smiles are huge. It was a lot more fun than they thought. And it opens up to new horizons as well, right? You do something you don't think you can do. You do it. It's completely different to what you thought it was going to be. And then it's like, okay, what else is out there that I don't think I can do that I probably actually can? So there's things like skydiving. A cheaper option that I use quite a lot is ice baths these days. So I don't really care about all the physical benefits of ice bath. For me, it's mental training. So it's putting yourself into a stressful situation, getting in extremely cold water. And you'll notice that if you've ever been to an ice bath thing or like an ice bath event, some people will get in there and they call it the cold shock response. It's this like, and it literally takes your breath away. Now, this is showing you, if you're the participant, it's showing you how you react to stress. Yeah. So if you lose control of your breath in that moment, then this is how you're going to react in a stressful situation. So if you do a consistent ice bath practice and you practice slowing your breathing down, you can do anything. Yeah, I was running weekly ice bath sessions here in Byron last summer, and it was at a gym, so there was a lot of people coming for the physical benefits. But over time, I'd get messages telling me like, I am so much more resilient to stress in everyday life. Like, I got cut off in traffic the other day. I'd usually be like pulling the finger and swearing and going off at someone, and they were just like, whatever. And they really noticed the difference this had taken. And it can actually be like you're sitting in the ice bath. It's very meditative because you're observing, and it makes the sensations are very intense, and you just observe the sensations and you take over, and you get to the point where you can lengthen out your breath so much and make it so slow, and you can feel your heart rate, and you can feel the ice without being too attached to it. And I think and you really see everyone's different set point, right? Like we all have a natural tolerance to stress. Some of it's going to be genetic, but a lot of it, and even a lot of what we might see is genetic, but we learn a lot off our parents, right? So it's nature and nurture. If our parents are more prone to stress, we're going to take on those habits. We're going to adopt their breathing habits. And so we take that out into our everyday life. So it's all about putting this into action.
That's funny what you just said, because when I did my research on overthinking, people that had parents that were prone to overthinking were more prone to overthink themselves, because they were brought in an environment with maybe one parent that was high on overthinking. So they kind of went on with their life and with those patterns in their mind about overthinking.
Yeah, I don't know if that in that research that a lot happens in the womb. So in that first 9 months. So going back to the heart rate variability, when you're in your mother's belly and you're growing in that first 9 months, you are so close to her heart. So if she's stressed and her heart rate variability is all over the show, that transfers through to the baby, and you're teaching this little growing thing inside you how to handle stress already from such a young age. So I actually taught a friend of mine. She was actually recently on a TV show about people struggling to get pregnant. She got pregnant naturally in the end, but she was doing these breathing exercises so much during the pregnancy, and it helped her through a few medical interventions that came through. And she didn't need as much medication, and that didn't go through to the baby. But she said it just really helped her form this bond with the baby. And sure enough, the baby is super chill, sleeps through the night. Little Eddie's little legend.
Okay. Great. So we've been going for a while now.
It's supposed to be half an hour.
Yes, but that's all good. What do you want to leave people with moving forward? Like, if with a question, with a quote, with some thoughts, with an action?
I'm going to say the thing that comes to mind the most, and it's a story. When I was maybe 11 years old, I was mowing the lawns, and I was, you're in that sort of age range where you're just a bit lazy. You're like, you have to mow the lawns because it's a job. And I just did a terrible job. There were bits of lawn grass everywhere. And Dad came out and he lost his toys. He lost it. Maybe he didn't have a healthy expression of his anger. But anyway, he'd said, like, if you're going to do it, do it. All right. Now, every single person watching this is breathing. And so if you're going to do it, you can be doing it better. You can be doing it as efficiently as possible, right? So to me, why wouldn't you? If you're going to do something, do it to the best of your ability.
That's it. Do it to the best of your ability. Do it. Go for excellence. Push your boundaries with your breathing. Like, experiment.
Yeah. And breathing's at the foundation of every single skill, whether it's athletic performance or mental performance. So no matter what you're into, if you're breathing efficiently, and if you start to learn what different types of breathing do to your nervous system, it opens up unlimited potential for peak performance.
Yeah, I love it. And I know that you are based in Byron Bay, and as well you do virtual coaching for people. And do you have any experiences, like in the next few months, year, that you would be open, or do you customize maybe experiences for teams?
Yeah. So the project that I'm working on at the moment is a retreat. At the moment, I'm just running it for private groups, and you can find out about that on my website. And we tailor make it for the private group depending on the
Yeah.
size, but we incorporate breathing, movement practices, ice baths, and as a very new thing to the market, we're introducing indoor and outdoor skydiving too. So we're putting all of these new skills to the test straight away. Very similar. It's kind of like an everyday version of the show Limitless with Chris Hemsworth.
And Michael, I would be very interested to partner with you in those experiences. So as well, if I have a team that is interested to expand their comfort zone, to push their boundaries, I would love to collaborate with you on as well, because I do believe that we are complementary in what we can offer in some ways. So in the mental aspect, and as well like help with some physical activity that could be reflected upon and bring it back to what is their day-to-day job. And as well with the world that we're living right now, I think there are skills that would become more and more important to have.
I agree wholeheartedly. And you have more experience in the corporate world than I do. I was blessed to have a dad who was a lawyer that warned me against the corporate life. But I definitely grew up in that realm, but I have avoided it for myself, for my own work. So yeah, I think that would be a great collaboration. I'm looking forward to it.
Exactly, because you have so much to bring on the table. So thank you, Michael. Thank you for joining today, and see you soon in a plane skydiving.
Thank you, Lisa.
Thank you. Bye bye.